Okay, so I got a lot of interesting responses and comments to my last video on Meghan Markle and Prince Harry and the interview that they did. And so what I want to do is, in this follow-up video, is talk about some of the questions and comments I got, and that'll allow me to discuss some things that I didn't have time to discuss in the last video. So I want to jump into it. So another question I got, one of you asked me, why, basically, I'm paraphrasing some of these, but why would it surprise you that the royal family would be racist? Now, what they're responding to here, I think, is toward the beginning of my last video, I talked about the disclosure that Harry and Meghan made that I think strongly suggested or insinuated that one of the main reasons why the royal family didn't want Archie to have a title was because of the race issue, because he was mixed race. So either the royal family or the palace, I can't remember, but they said the palace, right? And that just, to me, and as I said in the last interview, that just seemed crazy, and I just didn't buy it. And so what this commenter is asking is, why is that so out of your realm of possibility that the royal family could be racist? And this person, has pointed out in some other comments and Twitter posts to me about the fact that, there's this long problematic history with Great Britain and colonialism and all that. And to a degree, I just have to say that a lot of that I have not researched, and it's beyond my pay grade in some ways, if you get what I'm saying. I can't in this video just dig deep into British history or the complicated history of colonialism and whatever, right? All I can address is, do I believe that the royal family themselves, having done the reading that I've done, and I have done by this point some pretty extensive reading to different books and articles and about the royal family and interviews and so forth. And I'll talk about that more in my video series that I'm putting together about the royal family and their history. And my sense from these readings is that the royal family, they have a lot of flaws and a lot of issues. And they may have some attitudes at times that people would find problematic, but do I think that they are racist? And do I think, based on my reading, that they would actually be openly talking about how, or privately talking, about how Prince Harry's son shouldn't get a title because he's part black? That's just not, all I can say is that's just not in keeping with what I've read about them. So I guess in answer to your question, you say, why does it surprise you? I guess because I've done a lot of reading and research that gets into these other problems that the royal family has, and they do have a lot of issues, right? Like a lot of families, they have a lot of issues. But it just seems like the race thing is just not something that I see coming up. And so I'm not trying to say that, that they're like these really open-minded people, or they don't have racial attitude problems or whatever. I'm just saying this accusation is just really so far beyond what my research has indicated about them. So that's my honest answer. You can take it or leave it, obviously, but I do appreciate these questions, and I'm wanting you to know that I'm taking these questions seriously. All right, so another thing that got raised is that, and I thank you, a number of you who are better educated on royal protocol and when it comes to succession. Thank you for enlightening us in the comments. But it does seem, as I've learned, that there's pretty cut and dry protocol and rules governing who gets a title and who doesn't. And it seems like that's one of the aspects of the story that Harry and Meghan provided in their interview that's problematic, is that they suggested that it was something kind of nefarious, or it could have been something to do with race being a factor as to why Archie didn't get a title, or other things. It seems like it actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like from the limited research on that particular subject that I've done, that it was just really, it didn't make sense that they were suggesting that Archie was getting some kind of particularly unusually unfair treatment, or that the titles, the policy on titles was changed, that he should have gotten a title. But Anyway, so I don't know. Please comment more about that because maybe I'm kind of in the dark on that, but that's the perception that I've gotten since then. Now, another thing that I wanted to address, I got a couple of comments, people talking about what I said regarding the race, the supposed race comment directed at Harry by one of the senior members of the royal family about his son, and speculating or asking what color his son would be or what his son would look like as a mixed race child. And this was presented by Meghan and by Harry in this interview as being something that was just really, really bad or really offensive. And I had speculated in my last video that it could have been, it's taken out of context. We don't know the context at all of that. Don't even know who said it, but let's say it's Prince Charles, but we don't know the context of who said it or what was being discussed or how it was said or whatever, which is really just generally, something you want to be wary of. And so I was speculating that it could have been more innocent than the way it was depicted by Harry and Meghan. And I got several questions, people asking, well, or speculating, what would that be? How would that be? Well, I mean, there is such a thing as basic curiosity about what a child is going to, should I really have to be explaining these? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be tacky or rude, but it's just sometimes I hear myself explaining things that seem so obvious once I talk about them. But people, what is one of the main things that people care about or concerned about with a child? Like, what's it going to look like? And it can be a completely innocent way. Like, oh, I wonder if he'll have your eyes or your hair or this or that. So it is, to me, very conceivable, especially with something, look, as dramatic as the color change from someone who is not just white, but extremely, some of you call him ginger, right? But it looks a certain way. And then Meghan, with beautiful skin and the beautiful hair and everything, okay, and clearly very different looking than Harry. That's all that it's really not that complicated. And so I'm sure that lots of people, when they learned that they were having a baby, had a brief thought of, maybe not racially focused, but I wonder what the child's going to look like. I remember, this is a random memory, but I remember when Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds got pregnant, one of my friends was speculating, or some of my friends were speculating on what the baby would look like, because the parents were so beautiful, each in their own different ways and stuff. So I just don't know. I do know that, and I talk about this in the last video, that, as I've said, that the research that I've done, the reading that I've done about Harry indicates that while he is certainly, I think, a very good guy, that he is prone to getting his back up about things very easily, to misinterpreting things that are said to him, taking things in a very aggrieved way. And I went into example of that in the video that I just did. So, I don't know. We're getting this through the filter of Harry. Also, a couple of people did specify or did tell us that Harry was not, cut off financially. And you know what? And this bothered me. I didn't put this in my last video, but this is something that bothered me too about the interview, because I had read, and I thought, well, maybe this is just wrong, but I had read from a number of different sources a while back that Charles was going to continue to privately, from his own money, not from the official royal money or taxpayer money or whatever, but he was going to continue to basically more or less fund Meghan and Harry for a while in the lifestyle to which they're accustomed, until Harry and Meghan could get on their feet and become independent and financially independent, which apparently they have now with the Netflix deal and stuff, Spotify deals. But my point is that this didn't seem to jive with what I had read. And so I'm glad that a number of you commented on this, because it did reinforce that concern of mine, that this was something that you had read as well, and that this was kind of well known. And so, look, I'm sure that and the other thing too is that they made a big deal, Harry and Meghan, about the fact that that their son was not going to get security because they were no longer, what was it? I can't even remember what the situation was, but they really acted like this thing with security, that this is not something that they could do themselves. And as you know, I know Piers Morgan is very controversial, and I'm going to talk about him in a moment, but one of the questions that he raised that I thought was a good one is, Well, Harry and Meghan, have a lot of money. He inherited a pretty good bit from his mother, and then his father apparently has been funding him this year. And can they not afford their own security? Just like other, citizens, wealthy citizens would. But I don't know the answer to that. If someone who knows like the cost of security, or if someone who knows how security works at these higher levels, was that a really big deal to go from getting, official government security to having to pay for it yourself? And anyway, I'd be interested to know about that, because I just don't know. But someone did raise that point as well. But yes, Harry was not cut off financially. So I don't doubt that it didn't bother them, he and Meghan, some of these things that took place, and they felt like their family were not standing up for them, or were not supporting them as much as they might, or whatever. But I don't like the way that it seemed like in the interview, he was sort of making it sound like, oh, poor me, my family objected to this marriage and they cut me off. Or my family objected to how I was handling things and they cut me off. I know it wasn't because of the marriage. Okay. Yes. Okay. You're right. The word, apparently, so a number of people took issue with my use of the word daft in the last video. And what I said in the last video, I was talking about Diana, and I was talking about how she had a particularly close relationship with Harry, and I don't want to say problematically close, but there were some elements to it, just like any relationship that could be problematic. But one of the things that she used to say, just in jest, I think partly, is, oh, Harry's like me, he's really daft, and William is like his dad, he's really smart, okay? And some people were correcting me and saying that daft doesn't mean stupid, it means kind of silly or something. And so I just have to say, yeah, if that's the case, we don't use that word very much over here where I am, which is not an excuse necessarily to get a word wrong, but that's something I didn't know. But it did seem like to me, when I remember this book that I was reading, and actually I think it was a couple of different sources said this, that Diana made this comment, and it was kind of in the vein of, William is the serious like heir to the throne, and as such he basically, I've sort of almost lost him to the family, to the Windsors. But Harry, because he's the spare, and also he's more like me. We're both, William is really this and that, and Harry's daft like me. So however you want to take that comment. And it's not, and honestly it wasn't like anything that I was basing my argument on. It was kind of an aside. My only real argument with that whole thing was the idea that that Harry, I said, seemed to have inherited or taken on his mother's hatred of the press, and also strong dislike for the palace, and whether right or wrong, but I was just pointing out that he and his mother had a much closer relationship, in good ways, maybe also, maybe in some ways, it damaged him. I don't know. Diana, as I've talked about in the other videos, and I'm going to get into in my big video on the royal family coming up, she was very troubled, and she admitted that on a number of occasions. And so I'm not, I'm hesitant to talk about someone being an abusive parent, because that's not the information that I've been reading or picking up. But it does seem like, though, there were a lot of problematic aspects to her relationship with her children. William wouldn't talk to her at times because things that she did or said hurt him, or interviews that she gave embarrassed him and stuff. And anyway, again, not trying to trash Diana, but just giving you family dynamics. Okay, so I got Meghan and Kate confused at one point. I was talking about how Kate's parents were flight attendants before they started this business that's done so well, this party favor business that they started before Kate met William. But they started out as flight attendants, and what I was trying to say is that Kate faced a lot of media criticism that people just don't remember now. When people try to say that Meghan received worse media criticism than Kate, like I said in my last video, it's just not true. Every royal basically has had their time in the barrel. A number of you, thank you, reminded me that Camilla Parker Bowles, Charles's wife and probably future queen, she received just unimaginable amounts of hate, especially since she was viewed, as being the other woman. And she was, to an extent, and we'll talk about that in my other video as well. But anyway, so That's the point I was trying to make with that, is that there were all of these articles about that Meghan, I'm sorry, see, I did it again, that Kate was a social climber, and that she was from the middle classes, and she was trying to get into the upper class, and her mom had basically planted her at St. Andrew's School, so that when she found out that the Prince of Wales was going to be attending, and then Kate made a beeline for him, and they were all with these really tacky stories, and they called her Waity Katie when they broke up, and again, the press was, the problems that she had with the media were so intense that was one of the reasons apparently why William broke up with her for a time, was because he felt like she was like under this terrible strain, and he didn't want to inflict that on her. And there were other reasons too, but that was part of it. All right, so something else. What else? A number of you pointed out that Harry was unhappy before he met Meghan, and I agree. I agree with that. Like, I don't think that it's fair to paint Meghan as this someone who's just enchanted him and bewitched him, and he has no agency or whatever. And I do think I agree with you. There were a number of indications before he met her that he was not happy in the royal family with his role. I guess the question is, everybody's not happy. I mean, but kind of like, it's sort of not even a joke. And so the question is, I guess in my mind, was that such a deep existential unhappiness that it was good for him that he left, or not good for him? And was it good that she was a partial catalyst for that? And I have to say, honestly, and this was one of the positive things that I took away from their interview, is that at least on camera, he seems relaxed and happy. And so I can't say so much about her. There was some vibes, even though I was really sympathetic about some of the things and the suicidal stuff and everything. But anyway, okay. A couple of you pointed out that I made this comment in the last video that I was going into the interview, before I watched the interview, I was going into it expecting to be critical of Meghan. And you said, basically kind of pointing out, like you think that there's something wrong with that I was basically going in, as somebody put it, hoping she would fail, or I was gunning for her or something like that. And so I just want to clarify, I mean, I have done a lot of reading and research prior to making these videos, because the royal family is something that I've been interested in. So, I've been reading books about them and their history before I even started this YouTube channel. So, yes, I come into it with a lot, and I've been following these stories, and like I've told you, I follow a lot of the tabloid stuff too, which I know it's often inaccurate. But anyway, so my point is, yeah, I came into this with a set of, I would say on the whole, more negative feelings, although not strongly, and I don't think that comes across in these two interviews, hopefully, that I have these like strong feelings or profound dislike for either of these people. I have actually a lot of sympathy, more or less, right, depending on the mood that I'm in and what we're talking about. But here's the thing, okay? I did not go into it wanting them to fail. I don't even know that I would say the interview was a failure. It seemed like a lot of people liked it, but I did not go into it wanting them to fail or anything. I just went into it with what we all have, one way or the other, whether we admit it or not, is some kind of a bias about situations. If you have a working brain, you're going to go into it with some kind of a bias. There were a number of people who went into it loving Meghan and, thinking this is great, and okay. So that's all I wanted to say about that. But I understand where you were getting that idea. Okay, so the thing that Meghan said, and I guess that's mostly my comments. Now, I do want to talk about a couple of things here too. And Piers Morgan. So I did make a comment in my last video that I take things that Piers Morgan says with a gigantic grain of salt, and that I'm often dismissive of things that he says and everything. And since he ended up leaving or being fired or whatever the situation is from that talk show in Britain, I just wanted to give you a little more of my assessment on him. I've not studied up on what happened with the talk show, or if he quit, or he was fired, or it was a publicity stunt, or whatever. I mean, it seems like he is gone. And I know that I saw in the headline of the Daily Mail this blurb about how it's come out, supposedly, that Meghan herself spoke with the authorities in charge about this, and that Piers Morgan was pressured to leave. And so, again, I don't know about all of that, and I'll have an opinion later sometime. But I did want to say about Piers Morgan is that because I have followed his coverage for a long time, and he has become a major part of the story, let me just say that a couple of things. First of all, I think Meghan did make a big mistake when she ghosted him. Man, she was making an enemy for life. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because Piers Morgan, even though I know a lot of people don't know who he is or whatever, but he has been for a long time a major force in, and correct me if I'm wrong, British people, but he's been a major force in British media, particularly tabloid journalism, for a long, long time. Hasn't he been like editor of important stuff like the Daily Mail or whatever? I don't know. You can give me his credentials if you care in the comments, but this is my point. So he's talked about this story before, but he, before Meghan, basically like right before Meghan met Harry, and of course this, I'm getting this from Piers, but, from his stories, but basically right before Meghan met Harry, she was trying to, and this is kind of common knowledge, that she was trying to gin up interest in her, you know, and you know, even occasionally placing a tabloid story or whatever. And, you know, she used the media herself and was savvy about it at times. But the point is, she messages Piers or something. I don't know how it happens, but they meet. She wants to meet up and have a drink. And so it's basically like her reaching out to another media, a big important media contact in the celebrity world, and I think trying to like make some connections there. And so I'm sure that she must have flattered the hell out of Piers and must have made him feel really special. And I say that, I'm not even attacking her, right? I think she's extremely effective in a number of ways. And I just wish that she had a less aggrieved, victimized attitude at times, and that she and Harry would just kind of go on and do their thing and not talk about the monarchy and so forth. But here's the point. Where am I going with all this? I'm just saying that she is a very, like, I'm sure she's extremely personable and impressive and everything. And so I'm sure if she's trying to butter Piers up, as people do, that she was very, like, you know, like very gregarious and having a great time and really, you know, connecting with him. And she does those sort of intense things at times when she's talking to the camera. And so, you know, I know that Piers had to be really like flattered or whatever, because because of his reaction when she did end up ghosting him. It made him so mad. And so anyway, my point is, she did really mess up by ghosting him. But they got together and they had a drink or drinks, and they had decided that they were going to keep in touch, or they were going to meet up again or whatever, just professionally, but, you know, professionally sort of friendly. And so anyway, and then she meets Harry, or starts dating Harry, and Piers never hears from her again. And so, and I don't know if did he try to contact her too, and she wouldn't get back in touch with him? I don't remember, but he says that his version is that she ghosted him. And he does not say that that's the reason why he dislikes her. He says that, you know, there are all these other reasons, and some of the reasons that a number of them I share, or a number of you probably share. But you know, man. And so, as you probably know, he has been basically like 100% critical of them, and just blasting out, you know, pieces on the Daily Mail, opinion pieces about them regularly, and on Good Morning Britain, or whatever it is, the talk show over there that he just left, you know, giving these regularly like scathing commentaries on them. And so, I guess, what am I trying to say with all of that? I was just giving you some background, but I guess here's what I think, is that I think that at times Piers is unfair to them. I think that his coverage is too one-sided. I don't think that they're these cartoon villains, or I don't even know if villain is even a word that's applicable here. I think that they've got some issues, and I think that they're annoying sometimes. And I think that the interview that they did was disingenuous in a number of ways, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It has to be, I mean, there were some things that they said I just don't think were true. And I've gone over a number of those in the other video as well. And so, look, I'm not fans, okay, obviously. But he has really gone hard at it for a while. And in a really, just a way that is just always scathing. Like he's talking about, you know, the mustached man from a long time ago. I don't want to say that word and get demonetized, so just think about it, you know, a villain from history. And so anyway, my point is, but on the other hand, Piers raised a lot of good points, and that's the reason that I would keep listening to him, is that even though there was a lot of like bombast and he went over the line, and there were times when I was just like, but he raised a number of good points, and I think that, you know, he was actually the most entertaining, from what I can see, he was the most entertaining part of that show in Britain, the Good Morning Britain or whatever. So anyway, I'm wondering if he quit or if he was ready to quit or something, and maybe he's going to have his own show. I don't know. So I understand, and I'm sympathetic to the claims that what he was doing was over the line at times and was even like ridiculous, bullying to an extent. I don't know about, you know, that's a whole thing I'd like to unpack, because I want to be careful with that term. So I wouldn't use that term. I understand other people using it. But I also think that there's a place for, you know, people who have really extreme personalities in journalism, and, you know, and that he made a lot of good points. And on the whole, I think that I think that he'd be better on that show. And there's certainly plenty of people to argue against him on that show and to argue Meghan's perspective. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about him, because I did bring him up in the last video, and so I wanted to follow up with that. And I hope that the government in Britain had nothing to do with him getting fired or anything. I mean, that would really bother me, because if there were complaints, I'd read that there were complaints made to some oversight board in Britain. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, if that, you know, I don't like the idea of censorship. And so anyway, okay, moving on from that. Meghan, you know, and I talked about this a bit in the last video, this claim that she made that she was not allowed to get psychiatric help even though she was suicidal. I talked about, you can look at my last video, but I talked about why I didn't believe that was true, and a fair representation. And also she made this comment about how she wasn't allowed to see friends at certain points, and they would tell her, like, basically, like, and here's the thing. The way that Meghan put it, you have to be really careful with words. And if I have time to do another one of these videos, I've got other topics I want to do now, but, you know, maybe one day I'll actually analyze that whole interview and parts of it. But you have to be careful with words, because she says initially in the interview, she says that she was not allowed to see her friends. But then also she talks about how it was actually phrased to her like, well, your profile is pretty high right now, or you're out there a lot, or you're in the news a lot, and it might not be a good idea. Well, that is different. Okay, getting advice from someone, and probably sensible advice, because remember, what was in the news a lot, when did people's opinions really start to turn about Meghan and Harry? Look, I talked about this in the last video, so I'm not going to say a lot, but watch the last one. But they received initially a very, very almost universally positive coverage, and I don't think there was anything different about the coverage they received than like William and Kate or whatever, in terms of good or bad or critical or non-critical. And then, but what happened is that when, and this is a point that Piers makes, and he's right on this one, is that when they started to become more political, or when they started to behave in ways that were regarded as being maybe too like celebrity, what am I trying to say? I'm just saying that there were these ways in which they behaved that had not been true of, like, Kate and William. And I'm not saying that should mean anything, but I'm just trying to say that there were catalysts, there were reasons for the press coverage becoming at times negative. And so, you know, one of the things, and where I'm going with this, is that Meghan talks about how she was not allowed to see friends, and then she says, well, you know, discouraged because my profile was too high. Well, remember that there were these stories that had been coming out about her baby shower, which cost a hell of a lot of money. I can't remember how much it was, but it was like into the tens of thousands, right? It was like 25,000 or 50,000, or I don't know. Look it up if you want to, but you know, that had gotten a lot of negative press coverage. And look, I'm not wading into whether or not she should be doing that. I know it's a private, apparently taxpayer money was not used to fund it, and everything. And so I'm not saying whether it should or shouldn't have happened. I was just saying that was something that you didn't see, you know, Kate and William doing, and people might have had some criticism if it came out that Kate had these Hollywood friends and these celebrity friends friends who were throwing her, she was coming in the United States for this big multi tens of $1,000 shindig, right? It might have gotten a little bit of bad press. And honestly, I didn't think the press was any different from what it is on any of the royals. They all get dinged for spending money at times. Because people have this love-hate relationship with the royals. And so at times, people love them or like them or are glad to have them or think it's cool or interesting to have them or whatever. And then at other times, they resent the fact that there are these rich people that are sort of always in front of us enjoying this rich life, partly on a taxpayer dime. Okay, so this, yes, she got some criticism sometimes financially. Not a whole lot. The other source of criticism financially was when they took the private jet, or they took Elton John's private jet on a vacation. Well, that was because Harry had just given a speech about climate change or whatever. And look, I'm not saying that there aren't that the other royals don't have hypocrisies, but they have been called out at times. And people used to make fun of Prince Charles. They make fun of him because he was really into gardening. And he disclosed at one point that he talks to his plants. I don't think anything crazy, but he talks to his plants sometimes because it's supposed to help them grow. And he's really into all of this stuff about horticulture and gardening and everything. In my next video, the long one on the royals, I'm going to talk about Highgrove. Prince Charles, Highgrove is where Prince Charles mostly likes to live. And it's considered his residence. Well, it has these huge gardens that when he initially took it on, it was just very kind of overgrown and not cultivated and whatever. And then he came in and he had all this cool stuff done and has turned it into something really interesting. The Highgrove Gardens. So anyway, where am I going with all of that? I got lost. But the tabloids, they made fun of him so much. They depicted him like this weirdo who likes to talk to his plants all the time, is crazy and stuff. So just all of these stories over the years about the royals. And so where am I going with all this? Going back to Meghan, what I'm saying is I would imagine that when some of these stories came out that irritated people about the partying with celebrities, even though I know it was baby shower and everything, I'm just saying that when some of this stuff started happening and she started getting, and there was some political stuff said or mildly political stuff that she and Harry did or whatever, that it just, look, I can totally see a palace aide who is concerned about Meghan's welfare as well and her reputation, saying, look, your profile's a little high right now. It's probably not good for you to be photographed out, say, getting a drink or whatever she'd be doing with friends. And so we don't know. And I guess that's the thing that I noticed so much in this interview after the suicidal discussion, which, as I said, right or wrong, I was sympathetic toward, but I started noticing all of these, at times, inconsistencies or things that didn't ring true for me based on the research that I have done. And so, so I like I said, it does give me a cynical view. And there's some other things that I pointed out in my last video. So if you haven't watched that one, go and take a look, because I talk about some things I didn't talk about here and go into some more detail. So a number of my viewers took issue with, not in a mean way, but did somewhat take issue with the fact that I seemed to be so moved or affected by Meghan's initial disclosure at the beginning of the interview, that she had been very suicidal and had at one point basically more or less begged Harry not to go to an event because she didn't know she could be left alone and so forth. You've probably seen the interview at this point. And, a number of my viewers do believe that what we're seeing there with Meghan is an act, and that's not genuine, and it's not, and really that what she's doing is she's using that very deliberately and tactically to get sympathy, to do exactly to achieve exactly what I was feeling, how I was responding to it, right? And, you could totally, those of you who think that, you could totally be right. And there's a part of me, I tend to be a very cynical person. And it's not like I always believe people when they claim the things that they claim in the media, right? You can look at my other videos. All I can go by sometimes is my gut feeling, and my gut feeling is really undecided about certain aspects of that interview, and one of those being how genuine that disclosure was. So Yeah, my feeling at the time was that it was affecting. I haven't watched the interview again since then, but that was my feeling. And I will say that the further I get out from seeing that interview, then the more that I start to focus on other things about the interview that bothered me about. And I guess one of the final things I want to say is that I, again, do not doubt that, especially based on the stuff that I've read, that in a number of ways, particularly, I mean, mainly, emotionally or psychologically, that life as a royal, it can be extremely difficult, and in ways that, you don't really understand, I'm sure, until you walk in their shoes. And I do not begrudge Harry and Meghan for wanting to walk away, if that's what's better for them, and I hope they're happy, and all of that. But at the same time, I do think that they have said a number of things that don't ring true to me, that are unfair to, I think, the royal family, even though God knows the royal family has a lot of problems, and I'm going to go over that in my next video. And I think that I have a problem with their attitude, this aggrieved attitude that they were in some way singled out or received worse treatment or have been persecuted by the family. That doesn't ring true for me. So anyway, that's my update. I'm probably not going to do another one for a long time, because I'm going back to my some of the other topics that I like to do, and some new things. But for those of you who have donated via PayPal or Patreon, I am working on right now a long video, a history of the royal family, starting back with the childhood of Queen Elizabeth, all the way up to more things about Meghan and Harry that I don't talk about in these public videos. So if you're interested in receiving that, sign up. It only takes a $1 donation, so you can sign up on Patreon, or you can just tip on PayPal, and you don't have to have a PayPal membership to do that. Okay. All right. So that's my normal spiel for money, but thank you so much, and I will have another video up soon, and don't forget to subscribe. All right.